Today we are going to explain how to make a small clutch bag with a small locking clasp on the front with a wristlet strap. This small bag can be used as a wallet or as a clutch to put in your wallet, keys, change. Very practical. Leather color designer, smooth color with a little gradient crash, very nice. The first step is to print out the CAD drawing of the design sachet and cut it out, taking care to make sure that the dimensions are accurate. It is necessary to cut to the full precise size, because the size is not accurate will lead to the subsequent possibility that this bag cannot be sewn together or will have defects. If printed paper is too thin or too soft, we need to use thicker cardboard to reinforce our paper molds to avoid too thin and too soft to be easily damaged, resulting in the inability to cut material. Note that we also have to punch the above punch locations for easy positioning of the holes at a later stage. Okay, now that our first step of cutting the paper grinder is done, be careful to always check to avoid omissions or duplicates. Moving on to step R, cutting the fabric. The fabric needs to be cut according to our paper template. This time we chose cowskin leather. It must be cut to the size of the paper grinder, not too large or too small, and something heavy must be placed on top of the paper grid to prevent it from shifting when it is cut. Note that empty spaces should be punched and the median line should be marked. Later on, check that all the parts are cut to avoid omissions and duplicates. Proceed to step C and punch sewing holes for each piece of fabric. Before punching the holes, we have to determine the stitch line, which is the folded edge margin, usually 0.7 mm. Start by drawing out the seam tracks with a round gauge according to the shape of each piece, taking care to make sure the margins are even. Because it's genuine leather and thicker, we need to peeling the edges of the sewn hem to make the two layers together easy to sew and more nice in shape. There will be professional edging tools with size specifications. Of course, you can also use a carving knife like the teacher in the video. If you are a noob, advise to use a professional peeling tool. Of course, if you are producing in large quantities, there are also specialized trimming machines that are very efficient. The next step is to punch the holes and position the markings. Next, in step 4, we are going to oil the edges, which will make each edge stubble-free and more aesthetically pleasing. Before painting oil, please make the edge smooth by sanding. The material of the oil edge is professional leather edge oil. Artificial leather has special artificial leather edge oil. Leather is professional leather edge oil. Must pay attention when purchasing. And the side oil is divided into colors. That is to say, you can be a clash of colors or smooth color to choose the side oil color. Pay attention to the oiled edge finish to dry. Check if the oiled edge is dry and intact, then proceed to the next step. In step 5, we brush glue to fit. This is so that the seams can be glued before we hand sew them, so that it is easier for us to sew. You can't brush too much glue, too much and it will overflow to the outside, and you can't brush too little and it won't stick. Here's the D-ring to see how we did. Brush the glue and put on the D-ring, fold and press firmly to fully fit and stick. Drawing the seam line trajectory with a circular gauge and punching the seam line holes with a row of punches. Because it is to be attached to the leather surface, it is necessary to destroy the surface of the more slippery appearance so that the rougher fit together will be more firmly. Paste and compact, and then according to the hole position of the hole punching. Next, we secure this piece of the D-ring panel with a wooden retainer and sewed. Be sure to knot or burn the threads after sewing to avoid unraveling the threads. Next, brush glue to fit the top side, taking care not to brush too much or too little glue. It won't be as thick when you cut the edges and then paste them. It will be easier to thread the needle and you won't like the bulging of the stitching joints. The next step is to punch the holes for the stitching threads, which must be done with a professional tool. This tool is split gauge, so be careful. The same steps are followed, clamped in place, hand stitched and threaded. Step 6. Install the locking clips. Mark the center of each side with a mercury pen, which is brightly colored for easy visibility and secondly can be wiped off without leaving a mark. Draw the sewing line trajectory with a circular gauge and punch out the sewing line holes and lock position with a punching tool. Installation of the locking base. Be sure to install the shims and should be pressed tightly to place the loose. Send the location where the latch is to be mounted roughly so that the adhesive will be stronger after brushing. Punching of holes after gluing. Secure it with a wooden frame and then stitch it, taking care to carry out thread finishing, knotting or burning the threads so as to avoid opening the threads. At this point, our entire block is basically complete and needs to be spliced with the cover stock as well as the side walls. So the edges to be spliced are chipped and brushed with glue for bonding and compaction. Use a round gauge to draw out the seam line track, and then use a roll punch to punch the seam line holes. Once the wood bracket panels are fixed, they are hand-stitched with silk thread. The threads must be done. Next, stitch the side panels for each sides, peeling, gluing, punching, stitching. Sand the edges smooth and gently wipe the edges with a rag that has adhered to the oiled edge cuttings to give the edges a glossy finish and no stubble. Now install the cylinder on top of the flap. The main body is finished. Start making the wristbands, round planning lines, roll punch tool to punch the hole bits, wooden clamps to hold them in place, sewing them together, taking care to install the hooks. Note the installation of the hooks, which require rivets to hold them in place. There is a difference in the diameter size of the rivets to choose the right size. All done, the stylish leather clutch bag is ready. Congratulations, you can complete yet another bag on your own. Keep up the good work.